Hello, everyone. This is your OT Cesar, your occupational therapist, online playmate, and your chief growth officer. This is our live today. We're starting a little late than usual, and it's because we've been putting a lot of work into the Smart Kid program. We're going to have week 2 this week, and we're gonna talk about gross motor skills. But for this live event, what we're going to do is we're going to continue talking everything about autism since we're celebrating Autism Acceptance Month and also Occupational Therapy Month. And as we mentioned in our last live, I'm really happy that we're celebrating both in the same month of April because I'm an occupational therapist and a lot of the clients I work with have autism spectrum disorder. Okay, and in our latest post, we've actually seen Mommy Aubrey. We've seen that post with Rocket being diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. So we're also going to talk about that and also try to look at other aspects that are involved in parents, especially if their child just received a diagnosis of autism. So if you are a parent of a child with autism, you can ask questions on if you're dealing with problems on how to manage your child, or if you have stories that you want to share, or just want to appreciate also the different experiences that you have while raising your child with autism. Okay. Hello, mommy, says Ong Gonzalez. Welcome to our live tonight. And I hope you stay at the end and you ask questions as well with regards to autism, because tonight we'll be talking everything about autism. We're still gonna follow the 3-2-1 Grow program, the flow. So we're gonna deal with 3 questions, 2 toys related to a theme, and also 1 lesson at the end. And at the end, we're gonna cover evidence-based practice, which is something that you usually encounter when you talk to your therapist or try to search online for programs that you want to use with your child. So let's go to the next one, to the next slide. So 3-2-1 Grow. We're gonna cover 3 questions, 2 toys, 1 lesson at the end, and let's go. So this is what we're celebrating, same as last live, and this will be our second video about autism. So this is the post that was posted by Mommy Aubrey, which we shared as well on our page, and we're gonna read and see what they've observed with their child, and also try to comment on how I experienced this as well with the parents that I work with. So we have here, we'll just take away muna the overlay so that ayan, so we can see the entire text. Autism awareness for Rocket. Yes, our Rocket has ASD, autism spectrum disorder. We didn't share this right away because we are still learning about ASD. It was important for us to educate ourselves about it. At first, we were confused and questioned ourselves how and why. We searched around for an ASD specialist before anything else. Some people might think someone with autism acts crazy, has mental problems, physical issues, and other stuff. Yes, it's mental, but not a problem. Yes, can be physical, but it's not an issue. And definitely not crazy. Autism is different for every kid. As for Rocket, she has the common symptoms like the following, and they listed all the symptoms that they observed. So first off, I am really happy that they asked for they looked for a professional first, a specialist, before they made a post, and also that they really tried to learn about it. And now actually mas impactful yung post that they made because they've already had the information and the help before they did so. So I think parents who have a hard time setting an appointment with a developmental pediatricians would also really relate to the post, and also parang matulungan din sila with coping with the diagnosis, because with this post, I really felt then what they felt sa first 2 paragraphs pa lang, because that's true for a lot of parents. Okay, so it's really good that they were able to accept right away when they said na it's mental but not a problem, it's physical but not an issue, because even if we already have groups and also people who advocate for autism and they tell you that it's not a problem, like ASD is okay or ASD is like just a different way. We still have to acknowledge and consider that really parents um, have to they go through this state of shock when their child gets the diagnosis. Okay, so it's not because it's autism or it's because it could be other another disability. It's just the fact that parents also grieve and also go through this stage of shock when their child gets the diagnosis of autism or any other disability. So if you're a parent who went through this emotional state or you're going through it now, then ang good thing lang dito is for us to know na you're not alone. It's a natural response. You're not a bad parent if you feel bad about your child having a disability. Kasi ang ayaw ko lang siguro mangyari is that a lot of parent groups kasi pag sumali ka in a group na sobrang dami ng members and then ang dami ng parents, halimbawa na years na sila working with their child with autism, and then you have this new parent na kakadiagnose lang ng kid nila, and then you try to ask for help, you try to ask for advice, and then you get, shut down that it's not a problem, this is autism, it's a different way. Like, you don't wish for your child to be in a different way. And of course, you have to understand na kapag kakadiagnose lang ng kid, of course, we expect these reactions from the parents na you get this, form of shock and disbelief kung what they said na they're asking, they're confused, they question themselves, how and why it happened. Kasi as a parent, we have, di ba, meron ka ng vision of your kid. Like, you want the best for your child. Meron ka ng parang images in your brain of how you want to give the best life to your kid. And it's a natural process na kapag ka na-diagnose yung child mo and knowing that autism is a lifelong condition, so it's gonna be with them until they become adolescents, they become adults. So you kind of also have to grieve and let go of that old idea or old images you have na nakaplan na sa mind mo before you found out the diagnosis. So on that aspect, I hope na people in groups, we get to see na for you, kapag na-cope mo na-manage mo na yung grief na yun, or na-accept mo na yung child mo merong autism, other parents also go through that same process. Okay, so we can't push hindi, it's normal, it's okay, it's just another way of looking at things. Okay, it's just a different type of looking at the world, for kids. Well, that's true. Yes, of course, the parent is still going through their own journey of accepting it. Yun, yung pag-grieve nila, in denial muna, and later on, they get angry, asking why, bakit ako, bakit yung anak ko, bakit yung family namin nagkaganito. And then they go through the bargaining stage, where they say na, Lord, sana hindi yung anak ko, ako na lang, or sana ibang means na lang of parang ibang diagnosis or ganyan. And then you go through depression and yun nga, seeing yung loss of that old image that you have for your child. And lastly, yun na, yung acceptance. So the same grieving process you have for somebody, for an adult na nagkaroon ng diagnosis, ganun din yung mangyayari for parents whose child receives a diagnosis. And again, ang ano lang natin dito is that, ayan siya. Ayan, yan ang natin. Ayan, is that during this state na hindi mo pa completely na-accept yung diagnosis or you're still very confused and you're still very, merong hope ka pa na, Lord, sana mabawi or hindi na lang ganito. This is the time, lalo na kapag in denial stage ka pa, na you have to be very careful of treatments and interventions you find online that promises you na ma-cure yung child mo or mawala yung ganitong condition. Okay, so kasi of course, still, kahit naman na before and after the diagnosis, true pa rin naman yung statement na you really want the best for your child. But of course, given the diagnosis now, mas prone ka lang into saying yes into these claims kasi you want to give everything talaga. Okay, so just give your time lang to accept it, and good yun na you could be joining groups, but it's also good for you to really be part of kahit small group muna of people na ganun din in the same state as you. So you can ask for help from somebody who also just had the diagnosis recently, and also advice then from another parent who's had years already working with a child. Okay, so usually kasi ito naman nakukuha mo naturally kapag yung napapansin ko sa mga parents is nakukuha nila to naturally in Facebook and also sa waiting room din ng mga clinics. Okay, like parang natural chikahan, and then they see other kids na, oh, ganito na pala sila na years na nag-work with a therapist, hindi pala siya agad na nawawala. Okay, so that's somehow a good way din for you to get a good idea about what to expect from therapy dun sa waiting room. But especially now na online, mas mahirap siya dahil ang sobrang broad, ang dami mong makukuhang advice and also experiences from other people. So yun lang siguro, just determine lang first gano'n na katagal yung parent working with a child with autism. Kasi somebody, of course, who's had a lot of time already to cope and accept the diagnosis, iba yung mindset niya, iba yung state ng mind niya from you, nakakakuha lang ng diagnosis. So ayan, okay. So now let's go down to the signs that they observed with Rocket. So they've observed number one on the list is delayed speech, which is the most common concern talaga for most parents. We keep saying that every live, di ba, na si delayed speech, the easiest for most parents to observe. Also the main goal then that they want to target. And of course, knowing na si speech is a higher level skill talaga, that's when they go to therapy, when they go to OT especially, you get to see an idea na about all the underlying, all the foundation skills that are required before we can maximize yung development and progress ng kid natin on their speech and language development. So next one is no eye contact. And as we've said, children with autism, see eye contact, it puts a lot of stress and anxiety when they look at other people's faces, especially on the eyes, kasi there's too much emotional content, there's too much emotional information that they have to process. And for children with autism, it causes anxiety, and it also gives them, kung hindi man anxiety, another negative emotional reaction. And that's one of the earliest signs then that is observed in children with autism. Actually, sa ibang countries, meron ng under development na tools to assess where as early as 6 months, ilalagay yung baby in this machine where they're being shown this screen, and then merong person doon na nagbibigay ng news. Now, for neurotypical children, kapag walang autism yung child, their eyes would naturally gravitate towards the face of the reporter, of the person speaking on the screen. Pero if the child has autism, their eyes would usually gravitate towards objects around the person. Okay, so yung eye contact nila, instead of focus on the face, kasi months pa lang yung kids kapag na-develop na yung visual skills, parang part yun ng development ng visual skills na ma-attract tayo on the face. Okay, even before we can identify objects in our surroundings, na unang ma-identify yung faces. Okay, which is important, especially when we want the child to identify the mother, the parents, di ba? Yung faces, and to build then on their social interaction skills. So with children with autism, even in months pa lang, mas focus sila on the objects around the people instead of yung face and the eyes of people around them. Ayan siya. So when it comes to improvements naman, dun sa eye contact, possible na meron pa rin. It's not forever na wala talagang eye contact yung child. It's just more difficult for them. But again, it comes with exposure and also guided din na intervention when it comes to eye contact. So hindi na meron ng ibang strategies other than, kasi before, inaano talaga, like ganyan hawak, or you have to look, dapat ganitong times, you have to look 8 times out of 10 na times na tatawagan kita, dapat titingin yung bata. So ngayon, hindi na siya ganun. We're gonna use na a play-based approach because we want it to be as natural as possible. So, of course, if when you think about eye contact, kailan ka ba tumitingin sa ibang tao? Di ba? When they're interesting, when they're fun to be with, when they're playful. So that's how you want to present yourself then in front of your child para mas mag-gravitate din sila towards your face and your eyes, and makita nila yung mga responses mo when it comes to their play. Okay, so hindi na siya yung may sasabihin ako, dapat lumingon ka. Di ba? So what if firm yung voice mo or galit ka na, di ba? So with that one, mataas yung emotional content ng tingin mo, tapos galit pa, so something aversive for them. So mas lalong hindi titingin talaga yung bata. But when you use a play-based approach, a playful response, and a playful mood, and yun, partnerin doon na you want to follow their lead and join their play kung ano yung nilalaro nila, mas prone din sila to looking at you. And the good thing about that is natural context siya. Hindi siya yung by force na dapat look at me, sit down, eyes on me, mga ganyan. Okay, so yun yung mga lumang approach. So you want to use play-based, fun, mas natural siya na context. Okay, so given that when they get that same encounter from other kids and also from other adults, mas ma-encourage din sila to look at faces and the eyes. Okay, I love this. I'm learning a lot. Hi, Kuya. Yes, and yes, si Kuya din pala has 3 kids. So that's why I get to work then with my nieces and nephew with Kuya. And hello, Mommy Maria. I'm from Bicol. Thank you for this informative presentation. I'm really happy you're learning, and you can ask more questions if you want. And let's keep going dun sa next part. Difficulty communicating. So with this one, what's good is separate si communicating sa statement nila versus speech, because again, speech and communication is different. Like speech and language ay magkaiba. Speech is more on the verbal production, diba? The way you produce sounds, the way you produce words. But with difficulty communicating, there are still other ways pa rin naman to try to request for request a need, asking for help, calling for attention, inviting others to play. So marami pang ways of communicating other than speech. So it's good na nakaseparate din siya. Can focus on one thing for hours. Now, I know for a lot of kids, problem yung focus. But yes, for autism, merong tendency to focus just on one thing, or yun nga, paulit-ulit because of, as we've said, yung criteria B natin, restricted, repetitive behaviors. And that's true for play, that's true for their exploration. Now, kailan nagiging problem siya? Kasi if you think about it, problem ba yan, OT Cesar, na nakafocus naman siya? Why is it a problem? Na yun yung goal namin for our other kids, like maka-focus, maka-stay still, di ba? So, si focus here on one thing for hours, ang nagiging problem dito is that there's focus on something that could be irrelevant, and then distracted siya with relevant stimuli. So what does that mean, si relevant? Kapag nagiging problem yung focus niya on just one thing, kapag ka nagbibigay ka na ng instructions or nag-invite ka sa kanya into play, tapos walang response, di ba? Kasi tayo, yung in-expect mo na behavior is that kapag ka nakikipaglaro ka, di ba, with kids, kapag merong person na lalapit or makikipag-join sa'yo, so yung response mo in that situation is to lingon, titingin ka, you stop your play, and then you observe them. And depending on the age of the child, possible na makikipaglaro siya, mag-continue siya with the play, or mag-join siya dun sa other kid. Acknowledge na napansin niya na merong sasali, ganyan. Okay, so kapag mga ganitong situations, yung focus on one thing for hours, of course, naging problem siya kapag hindi na siya makapag-participate. Kapag ka if you call for their name or if you present other toys, hindi talaga nagpa-participate, hindi nagjo-join. Okay, so dun lang siya. And nagiging problem siya lalo kapag andun ka na sa school context. Kasi if your kid can focus on one thing for hours, of course, mahirapan talaga siya with transitioning. Okay, mahirap siya with transitioning from one task to another. Lalo na in school, mabilis yung transitions. Diba? Like, this is schedule number 1. So we're gonna have our welcome song, and then we're gonna have circle time. We could have something na movement. We could have something na tabletop. Now, if yung kid mo focus lang on one thing, dito na lalabas as a problem. Kasi they need to attend to structure na rin, okay, yung teacher-led na activities, and they have to cope, di ba, dun sa changes, and also cope then with the people around them. So dun siya naging problem. That's why it still needs to be addressed pa rin, yung focusing on one thing for hours. Now, kailangan ba siya i-target all the time? Of course, it depends on the context pa rin. So you can see na I specified the school context kasi you have to look at it na kailan siya nagiging problem lang naman. Okay? Kasi for example, at home, and your kid is learning about this toy and they're playing for it for hours, you can think na ganun din for other kids na if they have a new toy, they spend hours on it. So okay lang yan na ganyan. Pero you want to teach them how to transition, okay, or how to cope if merong bagong instruction, bagong activity, and how they transition away from that toy, yung saan sila nakafocus, and then redirect themselves dun sa bagong activity na binibigay ni teacher, and then participate until completion. So yun yung dun siya natin pinapractice bale and tinitignan as a problem. Next one, we have, if you can say you're an introvert because your doctor said, then you have to meet a kid or person with autism. Almost like an introvert, can be a loner, but never alone. So with this one, they mean it's more introverted but than an introvert. And what's good here is that when they said they're never alone, because children with autism, even if they can't, they could have a hard time verbalizing it, or they don't have the skills yet to be able to join in a game or join in a group. It's not similar kasi merong diagnosis kasi na avoidant personality disorder. Yun talaga yung shy, you get distressed, you get it feels stressful kapag merong interaction involved. So that's another diagnosis naman. Pero children with autism, hindi lang sila marunong mag-join, pero they still have this need to connect with other people. Okay, so hindi lang nila alam paano, but they still have this underlying need that they want to connect, they want to be heard, they want to express their emotions, they want to ask for help, they want to make a request. Ayun, yung mga social skills talaga, they have that need pa rin to have relationships, to have a best friend, and dun kayang turuan naman with regards to adapting their behaviors and learning these social skills para magkaroon din sila ng ganong relationships. And it matches din it has to match then the developmental expectation for that specific age. Okay, so yung social skills training, if you have that one in your child's therapy, nagbabago yung approach for very young kids, lalo na kapag yung mga younger than 3 pa, so iba yung goals for that one. You target yung attention, yung imitation, tolerating na nag-share kayo ng toys, and then it moves up, okay, into yung sharing, turn-taking, you have listening to instructions. Later on, it moves up into sila na yung pipili ng play, yung mga group na, following rules, win or lose. So, magbabago siya ng magbabago. Kaya siyang ituro sa kids. But again, in a way lang na they can understand and parang on the language and the type of sensory system that they're used to. So, pag mas kinesthetic, then you take advantage of it. Kapag visual yung kid mo, you take advantage of it. Pero it starts with yung teaching na explicit talaga. Ibig sabihin, kailangan mo sabihin sa kanila yung mga rules. As much as possible, kahit nga cards and yung mga pictures talaga of the rules para lang mas maintindihan nila. Kasi these behaviors, yung social skills, di ba, they're abstract. Wala siyang curriculum in school, kahit sa atin, di ba, before, na rules on how to make a friend, or how to invite others to play, or how to join a group. Di ba? Walang ganyan. So we have to explicitly give them a guide on how to identify if itong group ba na to open into letting us join, or itong group ba na to very close, they're talking about something na secret. Di ba? So these things, masyado ng nuance, masyado ng subtle yung mga clues, hindi na siya bale concrete, hindi na ganun ka-obvious for our kids. And for that one, kapag ka social skills, we have to break it down talaga into something, what we said, concrete. When we talk about emotions, it has to be focused muna on things that are easy to observe, like facial expression, body posture, tone of voice, okay, and then you relate it into more abstract things na like emotions, yun yung other people's opinions, yung mga ganyang thought, ganyang mga lessons na. Ayan siya. Okay, and let's go to um, she flaps her hands when she. I'll just remove first. Okay. She flaps her hands when she likes something, another way to address her emotions. So, comment ko lang dito, actually, ang galing nung whoever the OT is for Rocket had a good job of explaining yung function ng flapping her hands kasi it's really not a behavior na kailangan i-extinguish kasi yan yung approach before na if something, kasi yung approach before for autism is really more of trying to change and target their behaviors, i-identify ano yung behavior na mali and parang considered as autistic, and then change it into something na mas what we consider neurotypical. Now, what's good is that actually for us na OTs, hindi dumaan ng ganun na stage kasi we were really introduced into a medical parang background, medical na training. So, parang mas neuro based yung the way we approach din yung autism. So we could see na si flapping hands, hindi siya behavioral approach yung gagamitin talaga for it. Okay? So that's why it's really good na you don't just see things as just behavior. So you use a lot of approaches. So ayan, we have the behavioral approach is one, but of course you have the sensory approach, you have the cognitive behavioral approach, you have the kahit yung natural developmental approach ng kids na you have to determine if part ba to ng normal developmental sequence ng child ko if wala siyang autism, di ba? Kasi again, children with autism are still children. So meron talaga silang behaviors na, for example, meron kasi minsan expectation na I want my kid to behave talaga or I want my kid to sit still. Now, and then yung kid na ini-eval ko is just 3 years old. Now, inisip ng parent na it's because they have autism or they have ADHD, that's why they have a hard time sitting down or focusing. But that's a 3-year-old child, di ba? So, kapag ka yung child mo, if walang autism or walang ADHD and 3 years old siya, do you expect your child to really sit down ng ganun katagal? Di ba? So, kailangan mo siya i-weigh if it's because of your child's age, natural development lang versus yung sa diagnosis na talaga. Okay, so with that one, so with flapping hands, mas madali lang siya ma-identify as something for autism kasi it happens in a number of yun nga, children with autism, yung flapping hands. But that is correct. It's a way for them to address their emotions. Hindi lang emotions, actually pati yung behavior nila and also yung sensory din. Okay, kasi si flapping hands, yung mga repetitive behaviors nila, I have parents asking about turning, spinning, they tiptoe, they flap their hands, they do something repetitive paulit-ulit lang. And since it's something familiar and something predictable, kaya sila napupunta sa ganitong behavior, it's because safe yun for them. Okay? So yun yung theme. That's why they want to stick to routines. Stick with something na repetitive and restricted niya. Kasi if it's familiar, if it's predictable, they don't have to deal with so many new things. They don't have to deal with so many new sensations, new emotions, new people, di ba? And these new, something new for them, kailangan nila i-cope. Okay, they have to cope with these changes. And kapag ka masyadong mataas yung change, masyadong mataas yung level of coping na required for them, that's why they do these predictable familiar repetitive behaviors such as flapping her hands. Now, they said na it's different for every kid and that could be true for your kid. Okay, so yung mga repetitive behaviors nila kahit yung pag-push nung body part nila, it could be their head, it could be hitting with their hands, it could be clapping, it could be tiptoeing or yun flapping their hands or spinning around or going to a favorite toy that they want. Or for younger kids, yung crying or going to a familiar parent. So yun yung mga ways nila to cope. But the theme there is that they want to go to something lang na repetitive. They do something na similar para it's easier for them to cope. Okay, next one. Cries her heart out like nobody's around. From 1, she can get to 10 real quick. When you hear it, sounds like she's getting hurt. But really, she just wants her toy or something that she cannot express. So with this one, we talk about this with regards sa ano natin sa behavior management by Black Sheep. And ang main focus na here is that yung getting from 1 to 10, it really depends on the situation kasi ang daming possible na ways kung kailan siya lumalabas na ganyan. Pero if this is the case every time magre-request siya, so yun yung main focus na main situation na kailangan nila i-target din in therapy and also at home. So kapag ka ganito na for example yung kid, meron din kasing part na some kids aware sila of what they want to say. So merong specific cases na ganito na yung problem na talaga is the way they produce sound. So that's when for this kid, meron din silang speech therapist. So ang mangyayari, you have to work hand in hand with the OT and the speech para ma-target yung communication na part na yan. Kasi kapag ka dumating na sa point, halimbawa, I have kids na nag-improve na and nahabol namin yung gross motor milestones, yung fine motor milestones, minsan yung advanced pa. Nahabol namin yung visual skills, okay na rin somehow yung sensory processing, andun pa rin yung ibang problems with focus or yung mga need for vestibular and proprioceptive mga activities. But nag-improve naman and then delayed lang talaga si speech. So may mga ganyang situations talaga. So you have to work more closely with the speech therapist kasi possible na merong cases na of dyspraxia, speech apraxia. So that's the child's difficulty now with planning and also executing the movement na dun sa mouth. Okay, so that's when your speech might suggest AAC, yung augmentative alternative communications, to try muna to facilitate the child's way of communicating before the speech is developed. So kapag ka ganito, instead of just talking, okay, when she makes request, pwede na siyang they can teach na yung pointing, they can teach na yung hand leading, they can teach muna yung use of pictures or use of an iPad para lang ma-communicate muna ng kid before ma-develop yung verbal skills talaga. Okay? So with that one, kapag merong other means, alternative means of communicating, ma-decrease na rin somehow yung frustration ng kid kasi kapag ka ganito, pwede naman na alam na niya, okay, may awareness na siya of what to communicate, yung need niya rin, and then they just need another means other than verbal para makausap yung ibang tao around them. Okay, so ito kapag ka frustrated na talaga yung kid, you have to work on a lot of domains na for that one, emotional, yung identifying kailan yung need and then regulating themselves then in terms of yung sa crying and problem solving din. Okay, problem solving, identifying situation and then problem solving different ways to get it. So you have to work then closely with the therapist kasi for example, if sa crying, kailangan mo rin iplano and you have to be mindful of when you give the response. Kasi for example, yung kid mo, kung kailan siya umiiyak and kung kailan mahaba yung iyak niya or meron ng physical, that's when you give their need. Okay, so you want na mabigay mo sa kanila yung need nila when they do the appropriate means of communication. So instead of giving it kapag umiiyak, you guide them into calming down muna and then modeling yung appropriate means of communication like a card or pwedeng pointing, and then that's when you can provide the activity or the toy para ma-associate niya na yung nagpabigay sa kanya, yung nagpakuha, like the reason why she got the toy was because she communicated properly. Okay? Hindi yung sa crying part. And lastly, you have a hard time controlling her emotions. Sometimes there's no middle. Happy or sad, laughing or crying out loud, and doesn't know how to stop. There's a lot more for other kids, I'm sure, but so far these are the things we see from Rocket. Autism is always present in many ways. There's no proven reason that's 100% why kids get autism. It can just happen. We'll cover muna with this one, the hard time controlling her emotions before we go down to the reasons. So hard time controlling her emotions. I think I'm not sure how old Rocket is from the post, but see emotional regulation, paano ba? Nagde-develop pa lang siya with kids. Kahit na children without autism, they really have a hard time with regulating themselves. And the reason why it's difficult for some kids dahil, especially for kids with autism, kasi ang daming steps na required for emotional regulation. We have an upcoming course for it, The Kind Kid, where we talk about children's mental health and children's emotional regulation, emotional wellness. And we're gonna cover the entire steps talaga for it, talking about emotions, talking about the steps that I do with my kids, and also the changes they have at home to cover all this. But you can expect na si emotions kasi, ano ba, it's a way then that we deal with our environment and also the challenges that we have naturally. Now, si emotions, um, paano ba? Hindi, right now kasi yung conversation natin about emotional intelligence, emotional well-being, yung mental health natin is that problem na agad kapag may anger ka, kapag ka depressed ka, kapag ka anxious ka. Now, these emotions, yung view natin of it is that they're all a problem. Parang ganun yung na-view natin of it. But emotions serve as they serve a purpose, okay? And the reason why we have emotions is to really protect us din talaga. So anger is there to give you energy to fight back or to throw or to run kapag ka masyadong malaki yung kalaban. So parang evolutionary yung role for it. Now si anxious, kapag scared ka, you freeze, and in this freeze moment, it gives your brain time to process if you're gonna do the flight or fight response. Okay, so titignan mo muna, i-assess mo muna ano ba yung danger in the situation for you to plan out. And then si depressed naman, yung response mo for grief, for loss, ganyan. So, nag-decrease yung energy mo para hindi ka lumabas, para since low yung energy mo, you get to protect yourself then. Okay, so we're gonna cover more of that in the Kind Kid, yung purposes ng emotions, what causes them, ano yung responses sa body, and how, pero after that one, di ba, if you see, kailangan mo na ma-identify nung kid ano yung emotions nila, and then they have to learn how to manage it. Kasi right now, we think na it's a problem yung emotions, but they're never going to go away, di ba? These are natural responses our bodies have. Same thing with our thoughts. They come out in response to new situations because we've learned thoughts already while we were growing up. And right now, even as adults, lalabas yung automatic thoughts. Di ba? Yung mga prejudices natin, yung kapag merong ganitong situation, ganito dapat. Okay, yung mga dapat in our minds. Ganon din for emotional responses. So if this situation happens, ganito yung emotional response mo. Now, of course, naging problem kapag yung emotional response mo hindi mo ma-manage or hindi na siya tugma dun sa situation kung nasan ka. So that is when we teach kids or even us, ourselves as adults, na yung mga situations in our lives, magkakaroon ka talaga ng emotional responses. So how do you manage them? Okay, hindi yung goal for it is like how do you remove it from our kids? Like how do they manage it? How do they express it properly in a way na hindi nila masaktan sarili nila and hindi din nila masaktan yung other people in their environment. Okay, so ganun siya na process. So it's really it's kind of long kasi you have to break down yung emotional aspect. And same thing with social skills. It's difficult for us lang to teach because hindi naman tayo naturuan din about emotional skills when we were growing up, di ba? So wala naman tayong emotions 101 when we were in elementary, or like what do you feel about the situation? Kasi tayo naman, even if we are going through the same situation, di ba, iba-iba tayo ng nafe-feel. Okay? Even if you sit in the same cinema, watching the same movie, iba-iba tayong nafe-feel, di ba? Even if we sit in the same classroom, listening to the same teacher, iba-iba tayo nang nalalearn and nafe-feel and nare-react. So dito natin makikita paano ituturo for kids, di ba, to tune into their emotions, to try to identify ano ba yung nafe-feel ko in this emotion. Does it help me or does it not help me? Is it something I want to keep or something I have to change? And then they do the problem solving to deal with it. Okay? So ganyan siya. Okay. Avid viewer. Hello, Daddy J. Chris. Avid viewer here. Welcome back. Yes. And also to Mommy Regina Donaire, who is in the Smart Kid program. Hello, Mommy Regina. Thank you for joining tonight. We also have Dian Watkins. And we have some questions which we will read after in itong last part sa paragraph lang na to. Okay, we'll just go to this part here where they said autism is always present in many ways. There's no proven reason that's 100% why kids get autism. It can just happen. It can just happen. And that is true. Dun sa part where they said that there's no proven reason, it's because walang reason for 100 for like all kids with autism. So wala siyang parang identifier talaga na if you have this sure ka na magkakaroon ng autism yung anak mo. Kasi it's more of predisposition. It's more of if you have these conditions, mataas lang yung chance for your kid to have it. Okay, the most common, they're looking at genetics din. Pero sa genetics, they found some genetic information na common in 25% of children with autism. But even with that one, if you think about 25% of children, how about yung 75%, di ba? So parang iba-iba pa sila ng genetic presentations kasi hindi siya naka-affect dun sa specific gene or a specific chromosome. Di ba? Hindi siya similar to like Down syndrome na trisomy 21, merong specific talaga na part na you can say even while the child is in the womb na meron talagang magkakaroon talaga ng Down syndrome yung kid. So it's different for autism. So ayun, yun na yung max for that specific genetic material na na-find nila 25% of children with autism, and meron pang iba-iba na different levels din of percent in children with autism. Ano pa yung other reasons? Another reason is the old age of the father, kung kailan na-conceive yung child. So as we've said, predisposition lang siya. Mataas lang yung chance, but it doesn't mean like it's a sure chance. Okay, it just adds lang to the possibility. Next one is yung mother din nagkaroon ng problems during the pregnancy. So pwedeng infection, pwedeng ibang reasons. That's why merong magkakaroon ng autism yung child. Also, possible ibang complications pa, ibang mga toxins during the pregnancy. So essentially, yun, yung ibang problems na pwedeng ma-encounter during pregnancy. And another reason would be part na rin dun sa genetics. Kapag ka yung kid, they have siblings who are already diagnosed with autism, mataas din yung chance that the next kid will have autism. And again, it's not sure. Okay, kaya lang siya naging reason because mataas yung chances in twins, okay, na lumabas siya pareho in both twins, and then bumababa siya ng chance kapag ka fraternal, pero mas mataas pa rin yung chance kapag ka hindi twins yung magkapatid. Na-gets ba yun? So hindi siya 100% reason, pero tumataas yung chance. Okay, kapag ka may twin, kapag ka fraternal, kapag ka may kapatid, kaysa sa parang wala talagang genetic aspect na meron sa parang sa line ninyo na merong autism na. Ayan. Okay. So, next one. Another reason pa, and since we've said na it's predispositions nga lang, part na rin doon yung environment din ng kid. Okay? So, possible na yung mga sinasabi nila na kasi cellphone or gadget ng gadget. So, hindi siya cause din talaga agad na since nag-gadget yung kid mo, meron na siyang autism. Hindi siya ganun. So, meron ng predisposition yung kid and lumabas lang lalo when the environment caused it to present palalo. Okay? So, it's a mix of the genetic part, yung nature bale part, and also the nurture part, yung sa environment aspect ng kid. Okay? Sige, next one. It's possible for first-time parents to think it's the worst thing that can happen to their baby. It surely can be scary, and who knows what the future holds, but definitely not the worst. You just need to know where to go, what you're dealing with, finding the right therapist, the right support groups, and lots of love. Tanggalin muna natin. We're still in the process of learning. It's going to be a long ride. And then, next part, they said, Rocket is taking speech therapy and occupational therapy. Basically, OT is learning activities that she will encounter in her daily life. Yay, I'm so happy reading this part because that is the simplest and also a very accurate way to define OT. Kasi yun nga, from the word OT, it's really broad. and it's really individual kasi when you say OT, yung occupation ng each person, it's really different, di ba? For adults, madali lang isipin yung occupation kasi it could be your work, okay? So yung occupation, yung automatic na isip natin about occupation, which is work, yun yung agad ma-associate mo. And of course, affected yan kapag nagkaroon ng disability yung adult, 'di ba? Pag nagka-stroke, nagka-brain injury, so OTs work with adults in the hospital. Pagka nagka hand injury or motor vehicular accident, nagka-aksidente sa road, mga ganyan. So, pag nawala yung work nila, that's when OT comes in then to help them out para mag-return sa work, hindi lang sa work nila but also with their daily activities like yun, self-care, at home, na management, mobility around the home, and also moving around the community. So all of that part na you do, tina-target yan. Now in children, iba yung occupation nila, di ba? So occupation ng children is school, education, going to school, dealing with the teachers, with their friends, and then yung play din. Okay, so dealing with their environment, learning about themselves, their house, the toys, and then also learning pretend play, learning words. So yung play mismo, dealing with other kids, how to, yun, yung mga sinasabi natin na social interactions, making friends, having relationships when they become adolescents, yun, and adults then. So all of that one, tina-target talaga. And then here we have, if you have a similar story, please don't hesitate to message us. There's a support group, a community for parents who have kids with autism. You're not alone. You will embrace and understand each other. Our kids' struggle is our struggle. Keep your faith high and do the best that you can. Stay strong. Appreciate the love and growth of our kids. And these are the, I think, communities and the groups that they joined: Autism Community Philippines, Autism Society Philippines, Autism Filipinas Support Group Holistic Approach. Yay! Hashtag autism awareness. And we added lang sa caption natin, hashtag autism acceptance, because that's where we want to move now. Okay, so that's it for their caption. And then you can also join that support group. Our support group for growth, we're still building the Facebook group, coming from the behavior management by a black sheep. We just don't know lang what type of content you want in the group, since yun din yung reason, meron ng existing support groups that you want na mas specific. Pero the reason why we plan to have the growth na support group was to give you a group lang where you can see activities that's more focused on yung mga tina-target na in your OT therapy, especially for families then who have a hard time getting access to therapy kasi masyadong mahal or masyadong malayo, or with COVID then because of the pandemic. Pero please tell us, kasi why we haven't launched it yet is because we really don't know what you can get out of the Facebook group. And of course, we want to be intentional about it. We just don't want lang na merong group for the sake na merong Facebook group. We want them to know if it's useful for you, what you really need coming from a Facebook group. So potentially, yung pinaka different lang siguro with the growth village would be making focus, putting more focus on therapy and the activities that you can have. Since in terms of support naman and in terms of a community, meron na rin talagang existing for parenting. Di ba? Meron for parenting na groups talaga. But please tell us, you can comment down below or send us a PM about what you want to get out of a Facebook group that's focused on OT. Ayan siya. Okay. So we can have 3 questions. Let's go now to our 3 questions. And I can see na meron tayong follow-up questions. Review lang natin from last live natin, na ito yung criteria for autism: persistent deficits in social communication and social interactions across multiple contexts. Last time we also discussed ano yung difference ng communication versus interaction. Next one would be restricted, repetitive play, and patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. Next, they should be present in the early developmental period. And we have last one, they cause, hindi nag-appear. But letter D is that it causes difficulties in your child's functioning sa occupational, sa social, sa academic functioning nila, which is of course when you observe yung signs that your child has autism. Okay, so before we go to three questions, I think we can cover muna some questions being asked in the comments. So wait lang, i-hide muna natin yung questions, yung slides, and then we'll go to the questions sa comments. Okay. Hi, good evening. Kung may GDD na ba ang isang bata, pwede rin siyang magkaroon ng autism? Thank you po. For GDD, again, OTs are not allowed to diagnose or give a diagnosis. Pero for this one, si GDD, ano siya, kailangan siya ma-exclude as a diagnosis before your child can get autism. Kasi si GDD, it's a mix of, di ba parang merong delays across all domains. So, ibig sabihin, meron siyang delay sa, hindi lang sa social interaction and communication skills. It already includes all other domains like gross motor, fine motor, yung the way they do adaptive skills, yung sa self-care nila, also with cognitive domains, and also, so essentially lahat ng developmental domains and communication din na skills nila. So, lahat ng developmental domains, kapag ka-GDD, merong delays on it. So that's why kailangan mo na siya matanggal. So it's GDD and also intellectual disability. Silang dalawa, yung kailangan mo na ma-rule out before your child gets a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. Because in GDD and intellectual disability, meron si intellectual disability naman, that's the diagnosis now. Kapag yung child ninyo years back pa na-diagnose, yung old term niya is mental retardation, which is based on IQ, yung diagnosis. But of course, tinanggal na yung diagnosis na yan, yung retardation. Kaya nga, di ba, bawal na sabihin yung word na retarded. Tinanggal na nila yon sa new na DSM, yung manual, okay, for diagnosis, because kahit yung IQ test naman, merong bias in terms of cultural differences. Like for example, if your child is not yung doesn't have English as their first language, you're gonna expect your child to be to have a lower score, di ba? So kinonsider nila yun yung cultural and also the language factors dun sa IQ test. Tinanggal na rin nila yung IQ as a means or as a criteria for diagnosis. And then for intellectual disability now, yung ginagamit na for criteria yung development sa cognitive, which is similar yung sa before, yung sa cognitive development. The next one is the social domain. Ayan, yung the way they interact with parents, with their friends, and lastly yung sa adaptive naman na domain nila, yung sa the way they do self-care, the way they cope with taking care of themselves, the home, so yung mga chores, ganyan. So yung tatlong domains na yan. So bakit kailangan sila matanggal? Because if you can see intellectual disability, meron siyang part criteria na social domain, di ba? So yung kid mo lang, kailangan pwede siya mag-appear as autism, pero intellectual disability kasi may additional problems pa siya with yung mga what do you call this? Yung problems with self-care and yung life skills, and also yung sa cognitive domain. So yung academic skills kapag ka intellectual disability, nirarank din yan. Okay, kasi with intellectual disability, mas difficult yung cognitive development nila, mas grabe yung delays. In comparison to autism, na di ba, si autism, meron yung kids, di ba, na mabilis mag-learn nung academic concepts. So yung mga letters, numeracy, literacy. So walang delay on that part. And meron ding criteria, okay, si autism na before, yun yung Asperger's, pero this time binago lang into autism spectrum disorder without intellectual impairment. So parang ganun siya. Okay, so it has to be ruled out. And again, if you've seen sa GDD, lahat, so yun sa intellectual disability. Sa GDD, if you've seen, lahat ng domain. So kasama dyan yung social domain and the cognitive domain, and dun sa play behaviors din ng kid. Kasi nga, lahat ng domains affected. So that's why it has to be ruled out muna po si GDD. Okay? Pwede ba na magkaroon ng double na diagnosis? So pwede siya sa intellectual disability, but from what I know, kailangan si autism mag-grabe yung criteria B niya, yung restricted repetitive behaviors, para ma-consider silang dalawa. But the diagnosis again is on your DevPed na. OTs are not allowed to give a diagnosis, but that's how it is dun sa difference nung mga diagnosis na yun. Ayan, okay. We have sige, dito muna tayo. Good evening po. Yung baby ko, nung nasa, from mommy, this is from mommy Nicole Jane, nasa around 9 months to 1 year old siya, nakapagsalita. Then nung nag 2 years old siya, mahigit biglang hindi na. Mama and papa na lang po nasasabi niya, possible po bang may autism yung baby ko? I think DevPed po can try to look for another, kung hindi siya autism, another childhood disorder. If your child is female and you can observe din yung mga hand movements, like yung hand wringing or yung parang hand washing na motion. Usually this happens kasi yung nawawala yung words at 2 years if your child has Rett's disorder. So that's common common siya in females, mataas yung scans kapag females, and then around this age kasi yun nawawala yung 2 years old. And isang yun, kaya ko binanggit yung ganito, yung hand washing and hand wringing, kasi isang common observation din siya in terms of behavior to get this diagnosis. But again, it has to be your DevPed. Kapag hindi naman po, hindi dun sa ganun, your DevPed can observe other behaviors and also other parts pa of your child's development, kasi titignan nila yan, ayun, pwedeng Rett's disorder. You would also be asked if pwedeng nagkaroon ng seizures yung child, kasi seizures are another way, another reason for skills to regress or mawala. Okay, kasi if you can see, na-develop ng kid mo and then nawala, so pwedeng isang reason din yun siya. So your DevPed or your pediatrician would give, sila yung magsiset ng mga diagnostic test na kailangan ng kid ninyo to determine, kasi there are a lot of reasons kung bakit nawawala yung skills. And yung sinabi ko lang, kasi yung sabi niyo na 2 years, kaya ko lang sinabi yung Rett's kasi dun siya commonly nag-appear, and yun din yung seizures kasi another common reason. But there could be a lot of other reasons bakit nag-regress. Kaya pwedeng ipa-check niyo po with your DevPed and the pediatrician para meron pa kayong maraming test na gawin to really determine kung ano yung nangyayari. Ayan siya. Okay, and then let's go to this next one. I had gestational diabetes from Mommy Louise while I was pregnant with my twins. When they were 6 months, hindi na ako kita. Let's read lang. When they were out 6 months after we noticed that the other twin was having trouble with bowel movement and diagnosed with Hirschsprung disease. Then the other one was diagnosed with ASD. So it is possible that having had gestational diabetes may have stunted the development. Yes, that's a good, mommy, possible research, but maybe that is just one of the factors and genetics might play a role. Yes, po, mommy. So yun, another, as you said, yung problems with sa pregnancy. So it could be another reason. Just to add lang po as a note, I just hope na you don't go through feelings of guilt or parang blaming yourself na I am the reason why this is happening or ganyan, or kung wala sana to, wala sanang condition yung anak ko. So what's good lang siguro is that your child now has the diagnosis, so that means na they could get the treatment, the intervention early on, and as long as you're giving naman the right supports, and I know na spending time here is also a sign na rin na you're spending a lot of time talaga just to help your child. So I hope you've coped already with those emotions if you've gone through them. So it's a natural emotional reaction then na feel mo ikaw yung reason for it. But there could be a lot of factors and a lot of other reasons why your child has the diagnosis. But again, I hope you've already moved forward and then focus na rin now on problem solving and how to help your kid, how to help them develop the skills, and how they can cope then with the diagnosis and the challenges through because of autism. Okay, ayun siya. And then we have, I think meron ako na skip sa taas. Okay, thank you so much, Mommy Kat. Auntie Cesar, please continue to educate, inspire us. God bless. God bless you also, and thank you for joining tonight. We also have Daddy TJ, welcome po, and for tagging also, Mommy TJ, and for tagging your friends. We also have Mommy Jane, welcome to our live. Thank you for this. Auditions are very helpful. God bless you also po. I think we have questions to ask. Ayan. Let's go muna to uh, hello, Kat. Mommy Kat, thank you also, and thank you for joining. We have Mommy Cheska. My son was diagnosed with ASD just this month, so this session is very helpful to know more about this condition. And welcome, Mommy Cheska. We have Mommy Tina. Hello po, my 5-year-old son diagnosed ASD level 2. Napansin ko kasi hindi na siya nagla-line up ng toys or anything for almost a month na. My question is, may meaning po kaya yun? Thank you. For your child po, kapag ka nag-stop sila with that type of play and nag-shift, that's a good sign kasi usually kapag ka mga repetitive play naman, they just transition from one to the next one, to another. So ang nangyayari, for example, with lining up toys, pwedeng majority of his toys or most of his learning, natapos na siya with lining toys because yung lining toys or yung mga repetitive schemas nila when it comes to exploration of toys is just their way of learning. Okay? So, instead, hindi din siya isang behavior na kailangan i-stop or i-extinguish yun. Hindi siya ita-target with a behavioral frame, or that's at least for my approach. Dahil yung kids naman, the way they learn about the world and about the toys and about their environment is through schemas. And kasama dyan yung repetitive play nila, repetitive schemas. So, ang nangyari, in children lang with autism, they have this limited, yung restricted repertoire of schemas. So for example, ano ba yung mga schemas natin? We have lining up, we have spinning, we have wrapping toys, we have making circles using the toys, we have piling toys up, we have putting toys in a bag, we have throwing, okay, we have banging, we have, ano pa ba? So yun, yung mga ganun. So all of that one are also mouthing or making sounds with the toys. So all of that one are schemas that we use to explore our environment. Okay, so even kids without autism, that's how we learn about the environment. Now, children with autism, they stick into these specific schemas, repetitive behaviors, so that they can learn about the environment. So for your kid, possible na na-explore na niya a lot of the toys using that schema, so they could be trying another one. And also, you can repeat that one, but you can expect na in other situations, pwedeng bumalik din po siya as a behavior later on. Okay, so pwedeng mag-transition siya towards throwing and then babalik to lining up toys. So what you want to do with this one lang is you want your child to expand on the schemas. You want to explore more different, varied ways of playing with toys. Okay, so you can join po muna with that one. So yun lang po yung meaning with that one. They're done exploring possibly with lining up toys and they're gonna try another one. Okay, so you can join them in their play, expand it. Okay, para ano pa yung play niya, ma-expand niya pa. Next one we have from Mommy Lex. I have a 3-year-old niece. From Lex, I have a 3-year-old niece who tiptoes sometimes, delayed in speech, bulol magsalita, and incomprehensible. Although she can say, "Mommy, Daddy," milk, does hand leading. Sometimes lines up her toys, inattentive when I try to teach her numbers and alphabets. She's a very cheerful and playful kid, but sometimes has behavioral problems, including being manipulative. Will cry if it doesn't go the way she wants. Is this a sign of ASD or delayed? Um, See, ASD, for this question, I think what they mean for the other viewers muna, yung delay versus the disorder. Okay, kasi that's a line that's actually a really good question because that's what the DevPed would try to determine then. If delay lang siya, okay, natural concerns lang with regards to your child growing up or kung naging disorder na siya. Now, meron, so that's on the DevPed to do the eval. Meron silang tools for it to determine kung na-reach ba yung threshold for giving the ESD diagnosis. Kasi for this one, yes, possible na pwedeng magkaroon yung niece ninyo ng diagnosis kapag ka determined dun sa test ni DevPet Kasi meron po yung age, kasi since 3 years old siya, i-compare yan nila with the norm, okay, with the milestones for that age group. And then, i-determine nila kung ano yung age level ng niece ninyo. So that's what you'll get out of your DepEd evaluation, okay, yung age ng kid ninyo. Now, for this one, um, uh, a lot of the kids that I work with, meron yan, yung mga signs na yan, yun yung nagtitipto, delayed in speech, or yung ito lang yung nagagawa nila, especially that 3 years old na yung child ninyo. So they should be giving out longer sentences na, or they could be talking already about their environment, mas more words. Okay, so, and yun din, when it comes to ano naman po, with numbers and the alphabet, okay lang yan when kapag ka, for example, merong specific themes kayo na ayaw ng kid ninyo, as long as other themes naman okay. Like for example, ayaw niya ng numbers alphabet, pero they're okay with animals, with shapes, with colors, with other cognitive concepts. So you can see with that one, baka specific cognitive concept lang yung ayaw ng kid ninyo. And that's okay kasi 3 years old, you're just dealing pa naman with the pre-literacy part pa lang ng kid ninyo and going into school readiness. Okay? So, since you said na very cheerful and playful kid, what you can do is target muna kung ano yung mga toys na nilalaro niya, and then start there. Expand nyo muna kung ano yung themes with that toy. So, kung hindi letters and numbers, okay lang yan. You can work better nga if you work then with the social aspect of things like pretend play, pwede yun, expand nyo into roles, like hindi lang sa house roles, pwedeng community workers na rin, fantasy, like superheroes, yung mga characters in movies, para lang, that still works with the cognitive aspect naman po. And so later on, when you're introduced na numbers and alphabet, kapag ka na-develop na yung learning aspect itself ng kid ninyo, mas madali na rin ituro yun kapag ka na ano na yung na-lay down na yung foundations of learning for your kid. So ayan siya. Pero going back to the question, if it's ESD or delayed, that would need po your DepEd na talaga, yung standardized testing na to determine if disorder or not. Ayan. Okay. Okay. So, I'll target lang din yung question about tiptoeing kasi that's actually part na rin of, wait, how can I hide the current? Okay. Sige. So, we'll go muna to the questions kasi actually question number 2 is the tiptoeing din. So, we're gonna cover that one again. So, let's share muna this one. So, question number 1. So, the questions for today are actually from our live last week and then hindi lang natin nasagot ng because because of the time and then namadali na natin, so we want to cover everything lang. Hello from Mommy Ange. My daughter is 2.5, almost 2 months on her therapy na, and she memorized on her puzzle boards, and nito napansin ko she plays it na pabaliktad but still tama pa din naman. Dapat ba kami mabother doon? Thank you. So, Mommy Ange, that's actually a good thing kapag ka na-memorize na niya yung puzzle boards, and then kapag ka pabaliktad, that means wala kayong problems about sequencing, or yun nga, since na-reverse pa, kinaya niya. So you want lang siguro to increase pa the challenge because it could be so easy na for your kid na siya na din mismo yung gumagawa ng challenge for herself by reversing the sequence. But when relating it to visual perceptual skills, kasi yun naman yung main natatarget din kapag puzzles, so visual perception, the way they interpret and plan out then based on what they see, and also yung fine motor skills na rin depending on how small or how challenging the grasp is for puzzles. So, kapag ka ganyan, that could be very easy na for your child. The puzzle board, you can provide her with new puzzle boards. You can increase the complexity. So, pwedeng yung puzzles na hindi self-correcting, like wala na yung mga borders na jigsaw, which we covered. I think the question then came kasi we talked about puzzles last time. So, you can have different ways po in increasing the challenge. So, yung mga wala ng borders, para siya na yung mag-correct sa sarili niya. Wala na rin yung guide para siya na din mag-come up and mag-problem solve, identify the errors. Pwede rin motor challenges nyo, yung i-add ninyo. So, i-hang ninyo yung puzzle pieces on the wall para kailangan niya i-reach. Or you can have a motor challenge before they get pwedeng obstacle course and then kukunin nila yung puzzle pieces at the end. So that could be another challenge. Or pwedeng, ano pa ba? There could be a movement task. So pwedeng meron kayong yoga cards or exercise cards that you can use and then do this movement first and then I'll give you the puzzle. So ganyan siya. So possible na yung child niyo yung difficult na nung task. Okay? So ayan siya. Pero kung dapat kayo mabother, hindi. Increase nyo lang yung challenge para mas interesting for your kid and to also improve pa more on the other skills. Let's go to tiptoe this time. So good evening, my 2.8-year-old son. ESD, starting to tiptoe. How to redirect po this behavior and meron po bang reason why nila ginagawa yun? So one reason for tiptoeing that we've mentioned already is pwedeng regulation for the kid. Okay, they tiptoe every time they get excited or tiptoe when they try to manage their emotions. But another reason, which is more common, would be the sensory aspect. Kasi it's common for kids with autism, lalo na for those who have trouble with tactile and also proprioception. That's the coverage din pala natin sa Smart Kit, which is ongoing. Tomorrow is week 2 already. Pero for that one, si tiptoe, di ba kapag ka-tiptoe, imagine this is my foot, di ba? Kapag ka naka-flat yung foot mo, di ba, yung pressure naka-spread throughout the entire foot, di ba? So nag-step ka. So the pressure on your foot sa floor, andito lahat sa foot naka-spread out. Now, when you tiptoe, kapag yung kid mo may problem with feeling that pressure and also knowing kung saan na sila or saan na sila naka-step, gano'n kalayo yung step nila, when you tiptoe and you do this one, naka-focus lahat ng pressure ng body weight nila on that specific part, right? So what's going to happen is that it's a lot easier for them to know kung nasa na yung step nila or paano sila mag-move around in their environment kasi naka-focus doon yung pressure and yung weight nila on the on that part. Okay? So doon sa sole ng foot nila kapag nagtitiptoe. So since kulang yung pressure, yung input, okay, nung proprioception when they just do flat, when they do this one, mas mataas, mas madali for them to know where they're stepping. So what you can try, what I do with my kids is we start with yung mga textured na mga like carpet, meron din mga sensory mats, you can look for that one. So parang mga grass na mga mats or parang mga rough na mats, merong smooth na mats, mga silk na mats. So different textures bale yung i-practice niyo with your kid para marami, mas mataas yung sensory input bale for your child. Okay, so you can also do the massages. So there's a specific sequence for that one that you can learn also when you go to therapy. But massages also add. And also general mga proprioception techniques. Okay, so lahat ng pang-target ng proprioception, hindi lang necessarily targeted on the feet. So pwedeng yung whole body proprioceptive activities, pwedeng yung magawa dun sa kid ninyo. Okay, so for participants ng Smart Kid, we talked about that last week. So yun, so pwedeng matarget yun and you're gonna expect then your child to have a decrease din dun sa tiptoeing. Of course, it's not necessarily mawawala talaga, but a decrease or they could also have better means na rin of dealing with varying terrains. Like for example, kapag ka-flat, okay, wala masyadong input, so pwedeng mawala din yung tiptoeing if mga uneven surfaces, pwedeng meron na kayong obstacle course, meron ng up and down, merong mga parang yung mga reverse stones na iba-iba ng height, or mga blocks kayong nilagay sa floor, na yung parang mga yoga blocks para may elevation. So all of that one helps in making your child have more input, okay, rather than just tiptoeing. Ayan siya. So hindi siya isa-stop. You find other ways para makuha niya yung need niya. Okay, kasi that's that tiptoeing is a signal for you that they have this sensory need for it. So you do ways para ma-meet yung sensory need na yun para ma-target yung tiptoeing. Ayan siya. Okay, so that's it. Next one. Third, less common siguro would be like ayaw nila yung texture ng floor, which is very easy naman to identify kapag ayaw lang nila, may fear sila of touching specific surfaces, doon lang din lumalabas yung tiptoeing. So, understandable and also easier for you to target. Okay, next one. Number 3. Okay. Ask ko lang what is the best way to teach my son with autism to read and write. And he is 5 years old and currently attending OT and SPED intervention. Medyo hirap ako sabay every time I try to teach him to write and read. Now, for this one po, si 5 years old, yung expectations ninyo for writing would be, nabibuild pa lang kayo ng readiness. Formal handwriting training has to be, your child has to be 4 to 6 years old, and then meron na rin yan, dapat ma-meet na niya yung 9 na pre-writing patterns. Okay, meron yung sequence na you can talk about with your OT para ma-target ninyo. But that's how it goes with handwriting. So again, ma-target muna yung readiness nila, and then yung 9 pre-writing patterns. That's what you want to work with muna before you go with the formal handwriting training, kasi you don't want your child going into the handwriting training agad-agad without the foundations being prepared, okay, na ma-ready ninyo. Kasi handwriting and even reading din, they're already complex academic tasks. Like, hindi lang siya, when you say reading and writing, hindi lang siya specific na skill. Hindi sila specific. It's a combination of so many skills. Okay, so handwriting, you need posture, you need yung motor control sa whole body pa lang to maintain sitting, focus, attention. You have yung sensory integration, okay? And then you also have yung mga fine motor skills, and also yung knowledge about the use of tools, which is for this specific case, yung pencil sa writing. Also yung motor control na rin. Okay, so a lot of that, kailangan nyo ma-build muna yung foundations before you go to writing. So what's best for now, since you have OT and SPED, you can ask your OT na yung mga underlying foundation na tina-target ninyo. Kasi they could be working on gross motor skills, fine motor skills, visual perception, pwedeng yung specific na grip activities, and then that's what you can do at home. Kung ano yung specific problem na tina-target in therapy, you can do follow-up at home para mas mabilis yung progress ninyo. Kasi the best way for you to work around this one is that kung ano yung tina-target in therapy, you ask your therapist what to do at home, ano yung ita-target ninyo, and ano yung possible activities na magawa ninyo using the tools you have at home. Kasi possible na merong toys in therapy na wala sa bahay ninyo. So you can ask for adaptations. Ano yung gagawin? Kasi wala kami ng toy po na ginawa ninyo in therapy. So how can I adapt it to the home environment? So yun yung mga questions na you can ask your therapist to target. But if you can see, yung theme ko, focus on the foundations of learning, kasi focusing on the underlying muna, like yung before you work on handwriting worksheets, yung mga ganyan, you can work with a play-based approach at home. Okay, so we have a video on YouTube about using yung mga kitchen utensils for fine motor skills. That's one thing you can do. You can also have like obstacle courses at home to work on gross motor skills and motor planning. You can also have target din yung mga kahit yung identifying pa yung letters, or starting with the beginning strokes muna for pre-writing. So all of that one, pwede nyo ma-target in a play-based approach na hindi nyo kailangan mag-upo tayo, worksheet mo to, sulat, mga ganyan. Hindi ganyan na approach. Kahit yung parang using din home materials, you can already target these skills na smaller components of the handwriting. For reading naman, you can work din with a teacher or with a reading specialist. So merong SPED talaga na pang-reading. Or if for your OT naman, if you're already working with visual perception muna hanggang dun muna na level, you can also work with that part. So you can work with, kasi when you go then with reading, okay, meron pa yung mga underlying. Hindi lang yan book, okay, and then basa. Meron pa yung mga relating yung phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, okay, yung parang pag-identify nila yung letter and relating it with a sound, and then yung mga words na pag-perceive nila ng letters, and then itong group na to, pag magkalapit, it's a word, kapag may space, and then itong isa naman na group, it's also another word, so we have to pauses, yung mga ganyan, okay, and then kasama din dyan yung sensory dominance, like yung sa eye dominance, alam nila yung Sa culture natin, madalas yung top to bottom, left to right. That's also part of training. So your child, you can work on with kahit mga picture books, you can already work on that one. Okay, yung kahit yung pati yung pag-use ng finger din to follow yung pag-read. Kahit hindi pa nila alam yung words mismo, you can already work on that one. Yung left to right, top to bottom na reading. And it could be different kapag yung child, especially if you have OFWs here coming from different cultures. Like yung mga anime, yung mga manga, di ba? Like right to left sila. So of course, nag-iiba din depending on the culture and yun yung context ng child ninyo kung ano yung kailangan ma-develop ng underlying skills. You also have yung ibang visual perception skills pa like form constancy or identifying the letter as the same kahit na iba-iba ng font style, iba-iba ng size, iba-iba ng colors or form. So, ganyan. So, all of that one, pwede nyo matarget with your kid muna. Next one, yung mga I Spy games. Okay, so that works on attention. Also, yung mga visual closure. Ibig sabihin, kapag na-cover yung isang part ng object, kaya niya pa rin ma-identify as that. For example, like merong dog and then half lang ng dog nakita, alam niya pa rin na dog yan. Okay, so that's a visual perceptual skill. Another part would be, ano pa ba? Figure ground, which is also partner ng I Spy. Kasi coming from a background, alam niya yung object na yun na pinakahanap ninyo. So, which is important kapag ka nagbabasa ka rin ng books and then nagpa-follow ka ng line, di ba? Kasi difficulty din yan with kids na lalo na kapag medyo paragraph na yung pinapabasa natin na nawawala sila. So all of that one, kailangan mo i-develop. Okay, so yun. So you start muna with picture books, you start with mga touch and feel books para merong multisensory aspect. You can start with yung pictures books muna na mas maraming pictures to point at or look at rather than the words. Okay, para masanay muna sila. And then you focus lang din on yung mga pag-produce ng sound. They get to listen to you. They get to look at your face while talking and producing the sounds and associating with the letter being produced. So it doesn't have to be your child then needing to talk during your reading activities. But then you can have yung story reading time ninyo where you'll be the one to read and then they just listen lang. So yung mga ganyan activities just to develop on your child. Now, of course, at 5 years old, iba na din po yung milestones for it kapag ka-reading. So you can depending on what your OT and SPED has set as your milestones, then you can work on that level din muna. Okay? Sige. So, to summarize, you can ask your OT about the foundation, the underlying skills na tina-target ninyo in therapy, and then you can follow up and help your therapist by working on it sa bahay naman. Okay? Sige, ayan siya. Okay. So, we're gonna go later to two toys, and you've been hearing me talk about sensory play and last week about pretend play, and right now we're gonna go to constructive naman. Okay, so we're gonna post this next week yung infographic natin for the constructive play. But dito papasok, very common, very easy to understand na si Legos, they fall under constructive play kasi what you're doing is nagko-connect ka na ng parts, you're forming already, okay? And the reason why it's a higher level than pretend play, kasi kapag pretend play, di ba, ready na yung materials when you work with feeding, when you work with yung mga self-care tasks like brushing teeth, or ano pa ba, yung ibang pretend like cleaning in the house or doing chores, di ba? So kapag ka pretend play or dolls and action figures, ready na yung materials. But when we go to constructive play, yung child ninyo mismo, yung magka-come up or gagawa mismo nung spoon, just using yung mga Legos natin, or they could use a pencil as a pretend toothbrush. So, hindi, sa pretend play pala yan. They could use Legos, connect them together, and then pag mahaba na, use them yun as a pretend toothbrush or as a sword. So, ang kaibahan ni pretend play from constructive is that sa constructive, sila na yung nag-perform, sila na yung gumagawa ng mga parts nung pang-pretend play nila. Okay? So, si Legos, isa sa favorite ko because ang dami niyang forms, although isa pa rin talaga na set yung nabili ko. So, Lego, baka naman, di ba? So, same, I think you've seen this video already, you've seen this being used twice, but ito pa rin, pero gusto ko rin ito din talaga na set. That's why I chose this one because it has the wheels. which is a good starting point for my kids who love spinning. It's small din. It's small, the small parts then. And we also have the guides na rin if I want to make it more structured for older kids. Okay, so we have the car here, the ice cream, the dog. And then ang nangyari lang here is that pwede kasi si Legos mag-work talaga siya on the social skills. There's actually a sort of parang Lego therapy na nag-focus on social skills. Uh, Lego therapy is different from logo therapy. Okay, kasi logo therapy is more on reading. Okay, Lego therapy is the use of Legos. So si Lego therapy, ayun siya, ang mangyayari, you can have rules for your kids kasi if you can see, ang daming parts niya, pwede siyang pang sensory aspect pa lang. So pwede siyang gawin ninyong sensory box, yung sensory kit ninyo for your kid where you have the Legos and then itatago niya yung toys and then imimix nila. So that's really sensory. You also have um, you also have pretend play like what we have here, like yung mga cars pero ready na. Okay, and then it goes to constructive and later on you could have yung kahit yung higher levels of play na merong games with rules like with the guide or pwede na rin yung sila mismo yung gumagawa talaga ng rules. They set instructions, they set rules, and they play roles na rin. Okay, roles na sila yung leader in the group, sila din yung follower in the group, and collaborator na rin when they try to talk to each other about what theme to make. Okay, so pwede nyo gawin yan kapag yung kids ninyo, they have their cousins over or for therapists who are handling group therapy sessions. So ang dami mong pwedeng magawa with Legos talaga. So here in the constructive play, what you want to target lang talaga is that your kid will be able to connect them together. So that involves yung maintaining yung posture pa lang while sitting and also connecting using both hands na. And what you can observe here is that pwede na magkaiba yung function ng hands nila. So that works on bilateral integration na rin and higher levels of fine motor skills depending on gaano ka liit yung Legos ninyo. Of course, kapag malaki yung Legos, less challenge, smaller Legos, bigger yung challenge nila pagdating sa fine motor skills. Also, pwede nyo na rin ma-challenge yung cognitive skills ng kid ninyo. The more parts, the more difficult. The less parts, of course, the easier it is for your kids. So, essentially, ang dami niyang adaptations and grading na pwede niyong magawa with your kid. Ang dami niyang uses, kahit tumanda na yung child, right na tayo adults, di ba? Love natin Legos. So, hopefully I get to buy more sets of this toy. Pero I'm having trouble lang with the space and storage and also, of course, since mahal din siya, the budget aspect you have to consider with your kids. Pero I think the bayad aspect naman, the price, I think it pays for all the benefits that you can get from your kid. Okay? Ang pwede lang sigurong problem with this one would be smaller parts for younger kids na may risk of choking. But aside from that, you're all good with Legos. The next part would be, okay, next part muna tayo. We have the blocks. So we have blocks here. You can imagine Jenga, but if you can see there, you can make houses out of the blocks. So that's again a higher level than pretend play kasi ikaw na yung gagawa. Instead of using a doll house, yung child mo na yung gagawa ng blocks. They can set this part as the mall, as the school, as the grocery. So with that one, ma-target mo na yung cognitive concepts and also the social aspects rin with your kid. And pwede mo rin malaman yung capacity ng kid mo with learning about themes when you use this, when you use blocks rin. You also have Jenga. So this one ay hindi yung branded na Jenga kasi wala siya ng logo. So meron siyang, I think nabili ko to in a bazaar, not a toy store because yun nga, hindi siya yung totoong Jenga. But for this one, si Jenga, ayan, you can play with the Jenga na rules, but that falls, hindi na siya constructive play, more on the games with rules level na, mas higher level yung Jenga. Okay, but for this one, you can start making yung ano muna, yung mga simple constructive lang. Okay, so with your kids, for example, yung piling, yung pinaka-best na una yung ma-target with constructive play. Okay, even with younger kids, so piling muna, that's even a milestone being checked by your dev ped kasi that that includes a challenge on the visual perception, on depth perception, kung gaano kalayo, gaano kalapit yung pag-stack nila, and also on fine motor control kasi knowing that these are smaller items already, ayun siya, meron ng additional challenge on gaano ka careful sila and controlling yung grasp nila on the toys. Okay, next one. We can also have, to add lang, sabi natin 2 toys, but we actually have 3 toys tonight kasi we also have this additional toy. I use the Crocs na bag as storage. Pero for this one, I bought this one. I think sa Divisoria ko ito nabili na toy. And siya. But I bought this one nung nakita ko kasi it's very similar to what I use for handwriting training. So you have the big line, the little line. We have a big curve and also a little curve, which is good din. I think, where is yung mommy who asked kanina about the handwriting? Okay, so pwede din to yung mga ganito. Okay, so other means of introducing letters, hindi lang flashcard. So for example, with this toy, we have one big line and one little line on top. So you can make letter T out of this. Okay, or 3 little lines you can have. So isa sa pinaka unang in-introduce na letter, we have one big line and 3 little lines. So we have here, wait lang. Ay, parang same sila pala. Wait lang. Meron dapat akong long line and little line. Ay, hindi pala. Little nga siya. Ayan. See? Yung mga yung concepts with long, short, pwede nyo na ma-add, big, small, ayan siya. So, one big line, 3 little lines. So, I'll take time lang looking for the parts, but I was planning to make an E. So, dagdag nyo dyan to, ayan, letter E, or one big line, one big curve. Ayan, so that's letter D. Ayan siya. So you can use toys to make the letters. Ito, one big line, 2 little curves. We have, connect natin. We have letter B. Ayan. So that one. So yun lang siya. So a lot of toys. Kung hindi man ito na toy, if you can't find a specific toy, kahit yung blocks kanina, you could use Legos, you could use Play-Doh, you can also use it then. Just to introduce yung letters sa kids ninyo in a more multi-sensory, more play-based na approach. Okay? Ayan siya for our 2 toys tonight. And that's it for our 2 toys. Let's go now to our 1 lesson. But before we go there, we can have, I think, 1 question from Mommy Sha Marie. Okay, so we have, hi teacher, pauwi po kami ng Pinas. Ano po kaya pwede namin i-prepare at ideal seat for our 6-year-old son, PSD. 9 hours din po kasi flight namin. Thank you. And, okay. For the flight, Mommy, instead of the seat, I think, I would ask you first, bakit seat yung hinahanap ninyo for your child. But for this one, you can prepare your kid muna, sensory-wise. By doing desensitization, you can get them prepared muna. What I do with my kids is you can let them watch a video or a picture of yung airplane. So I hold sessions with my kids din, lalo na pag mga first time sila with the airplane or an airplane ride. So we spend 1 to 2 weeks or minsan 3 weeks with the kid just to get them prepared. So you have to get them prepared with the auditory part. So lahat ng sound, simulate niyo what they hear in the airport, coming from the car, going to the airport, going to the airplane. Okay, so pwede nyo i-target yan lahat. Okay, kasi iba-iba yung sensation sa airport versus yung pagsakay sa airplane. Also, communicating with you kung ano yung pag masakit yung tenga nila pagdating sa pressure. You can also prepare din po. You can actually practice na po with this one. With a gaming chair or dito gaming ata, or office chair. Basta a swivel chair and then work with a seat belt. So pwedeng belt and then i-simulate ninyo. Okay, na ito yung belt, this is what you wear in an airplane, and then you're gonna have this one when you see the signal, so pwede nyo ipakita sa kanila. So ganyan yung pwede nyo ma-practice po with your kid. If you're choosing, if you're asking if yung placement ng seat sa airplane, it's best if you go to the pinaka-likod or pinaka-harap with your kid, kung saan minimal yung sensation, okay? Minimal yung kailangan nila ma-deal with in terms of other tao kasi you can imagine they're dealing with the pressure, they're dealing with the sounds, they're dealing with this new, the temperature din lalo with your kids. So all of that one, ang dami niyang kailangan i-deal with and also the vestibular kasi ramdam nila yun yung kapag nag-change na yung height, yung you call this altitude ng plane. So with seats, you can use the back, pinaka-back, para it's easier for you to deal with your kid when they're coping with the new changes kasi it's easier din for you to go to the bathroom and also work with regulating your kid, like yung makontrol nyo yung environment. Okay, so you could have you could bring a blanket or a jacket to cover din yung side. So your kid can stay on the window seat para pwede ninyo ma-cover yung katabi ninyo or yung side ng aisle para ma-decrease yung visual stimulation. Kasi what you want to do on yung ideal situation ninyo is decrease yung sensation para decrease yung bagong sensation para they won't have a hard time dealing with everything all at once. Okay? So that's why you want to practice your kid with the tactile, yung sa seatbelt, yung sa pressure, yung sa time din, pwede yun, or with this one, with this seat, pwede nyo i-practice yung moving, yung expectation na mag-move, yung sa turbulence. So all of that one, preparation na yung kailangan ninyo for your child. So ayan po. And then, additional siguro, you can choose for your kid a regulating strategy, pang-regulate. So pwedeng a stuffed toy, it could be a food. I've seen kids in airports na meron, yun siguro I wouldn't recommend, pero they were able to bring it, parang basin siya with rice. I think that's what the kid uses to regulate talaga kasi he was really using it in the airport pa lang, dun sa boarding gates. Ang ano ko lang siguro dun is that, of course, it's a basin, so pag natapon, that's a lot for you to clean up. And also kapag mag-turbulence din dun, so mag-spill din siya. So find a way lang to help your child regulate. So it could be a sensory bottle kasi yung rice na yun, pwedeng i-transition nila into a sensory bottle na i-shake ng kid instead of a full basin, or pwedeng yun din, pwede na siguro ma-open and then pour if they really need to touch it. Okay? So just find a way lang for your kid to cope. So of course, for that kid naman na nakita ko sa airport, that's good, 'di ba? Kasi they found a way to deal with it and to cope, 'di ba? Na ma-adjust ng child. Ang ano lang siguro doon was for the kid to ano lang, yung kapag ka nag-spill lang. So yun lang naman yung ano ko dun with that part. But other than that, if the child's able to cope, the child's able to adapt and also to deal with the situation, and that's all well and good. Okay? Ayan siya. True teacher, I'm a mom na may hilig mag-research, dami ko tanong why need pa ganito, bakit hindi ganito agad. Scissor skills, palang dami talaga need i-target first before mag-scissors, hindi pwede lumagtaw. Yes po. So that really follows developmental sequence of all the underlying skills, especially with mga ganito, handwriting, reading, yung mga scissor skills na kailangan na talaga, yun, especially with scissors, my sensory aspect na involved, may safety aspect na involved, di ba? So, ang daming kailangan i-cover before our child develops yung scissor skills. Okay, kaya pati si scissor skills, you have to target muna kasi when you imagine scissor skills, gusto mo agad mag-cut siya ng maraming pictures. But there's a developmental sequence first, like snip muna, and then forward, before yung mga complex, may mga ganyan pa siyang pina-follow na sequence. So, ang dami talagang kailangan i-cover before we get to the academic skills. And we're down to the last part, our one lesson for tonight. Okay, so we have here evidence-based practice is not just the research, it has three equally important elements. Okay, so maririnig nyo to lahat. Evidence-based, ito yung best, ito yung maganda yung approach namin kasi it has the research, ganyan. So ang daming approach na ganyan na they start with you. And ang problem nga with this one is that it's minsan ginagamit na siya as a para marketing strategy din. But of course, hindi lang yung research yung tinitignan natin when it comes to providing the best activity for our kids. So ano ba yung tatlong elements na tinitignan when you go with practice? Okay, kasi evidence-based practice, Okay, pag research, that is just the evidence. Okay, so yun lang yung ibig sabihin from the word evidence. But when we talk about evidence-based practice, that means applying it already. These are the three factors we're gonna look at. Okay, so number one, the research. So you want to see if the evidence for that approach, okay, naka-level yan. If strong yung evidence, okay, established na ba siya na intervention, okay, meron yang emerging na intervention, or meron din yang, so basta naka-level yan, yung interventions, if gano'ng kataas, okay, yung research evidence for it. Kasi yung research naman na ginagawa ng mga scientists, ng mga researchers, ng mga doctors, OTs, in the academia and also in the research field, they want to test din, okay? So that's why dun sa medical part natin, okay, they want to test out din if effective ba talaga yung isang intervention. Kasi possible, it could work in a very small population but not into, it doesn't translate into a bigger group. Okay, so may levels din yan. So they will see in research if na-randomize ba, okay? So kasi merong research na very selective sila. 'Di ba? Yung research before about vaccines kasi autism na debunk na yan kasi mali yung mga research strategies, yung mga research protocol na ginamit nila, hindi pala na-meet yung proper criteria. So mali pala siya, very misleading yun. So that's why they do follow-up research to prove, okay? And then they did that same research if mag cause ba ng vaccine, yung vaccine ng autism, hindi pala, 'di ba? So they had a study of 120,000 kids, 115,000 kids, wala talaga siyang correlation, so they proved na hindi talaga, wala talagang connection, so yung mga ganyan. So same thing yung process for behavioral approaches, for sensory approaches, for yung use of video modeling, peer modeling, naka-level yan lahat. Now, next one would be the clinician. Of course, because there are strategies that already need different types of expertise on your clinician. So, for example, you've researched that this is the best approach, pero yung OT nyo pala, hindi pa nagkaroon ng CPD, yung certification for it, or possible na yung tool, yung evaluation tool or yung intervention machine or tool na gagamitin for this approach hindi available sa Philippines or in the country where you're in. So that, of course, proves another problem. So kahit ito yung best evidence, okay, pwedeng you can look at the next best evidence na kaya nung OT ninyo, kaya nung clinicians, nung speech ninyo, nung PT, ng doctors ninyo, para ma-determine kung ano yung best one. And the last one would be the patient. So this is where you come in. Kasi a lot of times, alam ko na, rinig din niya, this is the best, you have to do this one, or else ito yung mangyayari sa anak niyo, parang ganyan. Okay, now, hindi lang yung doctor and the OT and the speech yung part ng team. You are also very valuable part as parents, no, as a valuable part of the team kasi kayong magde-determine, okay, kung ano yung mga needs talaga ng child ninyo. So in the team, okay, pinaka-important yung child natin, and then kayo as parents, because you're the best one who knows your child, diba? So yung in terms of behavior, yung routine ninyo, yung interest ng child ninyo, and of course yung culture ninyo, merong approaches, for example, na hindi applicable dun sa culture ninyo. Okay? So, for example, when it comes to feeding, merong religions na bawal itong food na ganito and ganyan. Okay? Or merong, for example, I want to work on modeling nga lang. I had a patient na they're Muslim, and so ang mangyayari, ang gagawin ko dapat was return demonstration with the parent, and we were working with the massage on the kid. And I wanted to present it to the mother or to model it. This is how you do it. Now, in their culture, bawal pala yung ganun. So I have to adapt. Like, how do I teach it to the mother na bawal mag-touch? Okay, so I had to work with the child or possible another therapist para lang mapakita sa parent, and then we still do the return demonstration. So we have to do adaptations on it. Or pwedeng video modeling. So if you have video modeling, you know it's effective, pero for your patient, hirap yung parent with getting the videos because for ganitong reasons. Okay, so possible problems with tech or possible they don't know how to do it. So you have to find other ways, bale, on how to meet the goal while adapting to the need. So with that being said, it's good lang talaga. The best way for you to go around evidence-based approach is to really communicate with your doctors with your DevPeds, with your OTs, with your speech, kung ano yung uh, percep- perspective din ninyo with regards to a specific intervention or yung mga decisions ninyo on how we go about the therapy with your child. Okay? So, kasi meron iba na they want lang to really put full trust lahat ng decision making talaga on the professional because the professional. But of course, hindi na yan yung approach lang natin now. Okay? That's the traditional way of doing things. But now, moving towards more on rehabilitation approach, okay na, kayo din mismo, you're very valuable parts of the team. You could even suggest na maybe we could take this direction, ito yung goals na i-set natin this time, or maybe possible na somebody could help out at home for these skills. So pwede po ba na later natin i-target ito yung i-prioritize natin. So you can take a more active role din talaga in making decisions for your child. Okay, so yan siya. We have from last one. Hello, Mommy Michelle. Ayan. So we have lahat ng live ata na-attend ni Mommy Michelle. Yes, welcome again, Mommy Michelle. Ayan, and from Luis this time, last question siguro before we end our live because that's the end of our 3-2-1 grow. That's our last lesson. So to address lang this question from Mommy Luis, as an OT po ba, what's an effective way of giving feedback? Is it right after every session or at least 5 to 10 sessions, then give an assessment? Okay, so this is actually the main problem. That's why we launched the Smart Kit. Again, yung second week now will be tomorrow. That's why we won't most likely not receive new participants. But for this one, that's why we had the Smart Kit program because we're covering sensory integration. Tomorrow we're covering gross motor skills. Next week fine motor skills because we want to cover yung the parang yung ano yung nasa mind ng OT ninyo, bale, okay? So kahit si sensory integration, meron pa yung parang deep discussion. Last week, we were supposed to just have Friday, like 2.5 hours kami on Friday, but the group extended into Saturday, another 2.5 hours just to talk about strategies. Kasi I understand na yung 5 to 10 minutes talaga every after session, kulang talaga siya for the feedback because for you to apply then correctly and safely yung mga sensory integration strategies and interventions nung OT ninyo. Of course, you get ideas based on the feedback time, okay, and also basing on the notes that your therapist gives. But meron pa yung underlying principles as to why we're doing this one. So it's a lot easier for you to do the activities and also adapt it using the materials you have at home if you understand the underlying principles. So for this specific question, effective for me yung giving feedback after every session pa rin para lang ma-point out yung specific approach na ginamit ninyo. And also to teach, very important, especially kapag bago pa kayo to therapy, so that your therapist could already explain ano yung mga tina-target ninyo during the session and yung reasoning behind that approach. Okay, kasi kailangan nila ma-explain sa inyo, halimbawa, ano yung vestibular, ano yung proprioception, ano yung visual perception, ano yung mga terms bale na medyo medical part na and translate it into activities that you can do at home. So yun yung hinahabol ninyo sa feedback. So at the start, pwede po yun, best din yun approach for me that you spend 10 to 15 minutes at the end. Minsan nga, I have a session talaga with the parent na before I start the session with the kid, I spend the first 30 minutes just talking about the concept, the underlying principle behind reading, ayan, yung sensory integration, just for the parent to understand it. Kasi I want na moving forward, mas productive yung future sessions namin, yung one-on-one namin with the kid, kapag ka na-understand na ng parent why we're doing it. Okay? Kasi hindi talaga enough yung ganun na feedback time. So, important yan at the start. Pero later on, I have kids na I spend the entire hour na talaga, mas sulit din na I spend the full 1 hour, minsan lumalagpas pa, just working with the kid because the parent already understands what I'm doing. So, meron na kaming sessions na hindi kami nag-feedback because alam na ng parent na this is the reason why I'm doing the intervention. and also because meron lang kaming nasa-set na days halimbawa na I really need to talk with the parent because I want na ma-follow up din. Okay, or kapag ka nag-change kami ng approach or I want them to do this activity to follow up kapag ka nakita ko na during our session hindi talaga enough yung hour namin, and I want na during the week parang kasi ma-observe mo yan during the session na kapag nagawa namin to next session mag-improve and the following session mag-improve palalo. Meron ka talagang makakatch na specific aspect na skill na hindi talaga enough yung weekly namin or twice a week just to target this specific skill. Okay, so kailangan talaga siya ng mas intensive. So I want the parent to work further sa bahay nila para lang mas mabilis. Makita ko na mas mabilis yung progress in this specific aspect. Okay? So ganyan siya. And same din with mommy siya. As a parent, mas gusto ko after every session, yes, para din ma-translate. Okay, kasi what you want to see, yun yung mga questions that you can ask. The best questions you can ask is, ano yung mga tina-target for the activity? Ano yung underlying skill, bale? For what reason? Kasi yun nga, as we've said, play siya, yung labas, and then si Uti niya naman, ma-explain din naman niya nila na this is for handwriting later on, this is for social interaction later on, this is for, what do you call this? This is for yung mga mas complex pa na task, like yung mga self-care activities, ganyan. Okay? And last one would be, how do I translate it to home activities din? Okay, what do I do at home para ma-follow up namin? Okay, so yun siya. Ayan. Okay. And thank you, Mommy Lex. And thank you din for joining tonight. Ayan, and thank you, Mommy Louise. Ayan siya. I think we're done. I'm so happy kasi we have people na rin who join every live. Yes, like Mommy Michelle, thank you so much for joining every week. We have sa taas din kanina, Mommy Regina. We also have Daddy J. Chris kanina. And hello, Mommy Katrina and Mommy Nicole Jane. And the question kanina. Okay. So if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to comment. We will answer that one in the next live. But for tonight, we spent the last 1 hour 51 minutes together. Thank you so much for staying the entire night. Thank you so much for joining. And yes, have a growth evening. And yeah, 3, 2, 1, grow. Okay, is there a repeat of our smart sessions? I mean, next batch. Yes, po. Just for now, we're closing lang already kasi we've already covered sensory integration. Tomorrow we're gonna talk about gross motor skills. We offered it lang to some na pwede pang humabol, pero kasi that was 5 hours of the video kasi meron na namang video recording of it. So ayan siya. But there's a repeat batch. We're still finalizing the schedule if we're gonna go with the Kind Kid already kasi nga Kind Kid will cover po more on the emotional regulation na and also yung mental health and emotional intelligence ng kids. Or if we would do a run of the smart session, yes. But the smart session, ayan, dun ko i-cover lahat for sensory integration, until self-care, habit training, and application. With the goal of kayo po, mas productive yung feedback time, mas may understanding na kayo of yung mind ng OT ninyo, and kayo din mismo marunong na rin mag-schedule, mag-plan out with just 45 minutes of growth time at home, para you don't spend the entire day thinking na kailangan ko ito ipagawa. So you're gonna learn the skills of selecting activities na top priority goals for your kids, and then medyo mas at least mas high yield yung activities ninyo na, and the toys and equipment din na bibili ninyo at home. So ayan, so meron na din yung coaching, so I can guide you one-on-one to adapt the strategies to your kids. So that one po. But don't worry, we're gonna announce later on yung schedules for our future events. Right now lang we're just working on the Smart Kit program. And by June, July, we're gonna have the schedule now of the other events. Po. Yun siya. And that's it for our live discussion. So that's 10:27 p.m. already. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, mommies, daddies, and therapists and teachers if you have them in the group now. And good grow evening. Yes, have a grow night. Okay, bye bye, and thank you. See you soon.